Hey YouTube, my name's Nick, and it's been a couple months since my last chess video. I have been playing chess a lot since then. However, I haven't had a lot of cool games like that one until a couple days ago. I played an over-the-board tournament here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and now, like I said in the last video, I'm just an intermediate chess player. I'm not super great or anything. But I will say that I feel like this game was a pretty cool game. I think it had a lot of instructive moments. And it's far from a perfect game, but I did have over 80 accuracy with the black pieces. And like I said, I think this game had some cool moments. Unlike the last video, there's no brilliant moves, but there is at least one move that I feel I got cheated out of the double exclamation mark on. And we'll definitely talk about that move. But without further ado, I'd really like to show you this game. I'm pretty proud of this one. And yeah, I'm going to just talk through the moves. Please don't judge me or my opponent too hard for this game. Like I said, we're just intermediate players. But without further ado, this game started with one pawn to c4, and I played one knight f6. Now, already, this is kind of a very uncommon opening. Basically, this is an English opening, and then I open with my knight. This is a sort of, this is a book move, and this is a book move. Oftentimes with the English opening, it's a little bit more common to respond with a pawn move, such as e5, or to go c5, try to keep things symmetrical. But I like to lead with my knight here because one of my favorite openings to play, even though it's perhaps a little bit above my level, is the King's Indian defense. And this offers the opportunity against one c4 if he plays a certain series of moves, with the most important move being being that he has to play d4 at a certain point. It offers the chance for the opening to turn into a King's Indian defense, which is a pretty complicated opening. And since it's above my level and I've learned it a decent bit, I like when that one can happen on the board against players at my level, because it gives me a chance to maybe get them into a position where they're uncomfortable. But okay, so my opponent, he goes with the next move, he goes g3, and I go d6. Because I want to prepare to play e5 in the center of the board. And I did have a little bit of trouble deciding when to play e5 exactly. But okay, so he plays g3, I play d6, he plays bishop g2. That's the point of playing g3, is you want to fianchetto your bishop. And in the English, this bishop over here for white becomes a very powerful piece. As you can see, it's on a very strong diagonal. It's aiming down here at b7 for me. I have to be careful I don't make any silly moves like moving this bishop too soon and then hanging this pawn and also this rook. That would be really bad. So I already, am having a piece I have to really keep an eye on and be careful about. But all right, so he goes bishop g2. Now I go g6. I say, if you're going to create a really strong bishop, sometimes people call this a dragon bishop. Sometimes people call this like a sniper bishop. The more official term for it is a fianchettoed bishop. It's an Italian word. I said, if you're going to have a bishop like that, I'm going to have a bishop like that. So I go g6 myself. Now he goes knight c3. And again, we're keeping things super typical here. Again, this is still all book moves. And I say now is the time for e5. If he's going to kind of have this weird setup, which is still all book, but I said, all right, if you're going to give me the center, I'm going to take the center. So after I play e5, he plays e3, perhaps preparing for a d4 pawn break, which will happen shortly. That's what he goes with. He goes with e3, and I say, okay, now I'm going to give me a strong bishop as well. I'm going to give myself a strong bishop. Since you have one, I'm going to have one. All right, now he plays knight ge2, which is his last book move that he plays. And I decide with pawn to c6. Because remember when I was talking about how this pawn was going to be a problem if I move this bishop away and if I wasn't careful. So if I put this pawn in the way, it does two things. One, it adds another layer of protection on this diagonal, and then it also gives me a pawn so I can maybe push into the center at some point and recapture. I'm probably not going to do that immediately. The first biggest reason is so that this diagonal is cushioned a little bit. So after I play c6, he goes ahead and castles. By the way, my white king on the set is missing his crown. I've had this board for a long time, since I was like 9 years old. And at some point, I think I dropped the king on the ground. He landed on his crown and it came off. So yeah, even though the king maybe looks a bit strange without his crown, just know that that's the white king. But anyways, so he castles and I go with bishop to e6. What I'm doing is I'm attacking this c4 pawn, and I'm sort of provoking him to have to spend a move to protect it, because my plan is to go queen d7 on the next move. So that is exactly what happens. He protects it with b3, and then I go queen d7. Now, the reason I go queen d7 is because I want to set up a nice bishop leading in front, queen behind, battery over here. I want to get my bishop to h3, and I want to question this bishop, and I want to try to trade it off. And because, like I said again and again, this is one of his stronger pieces, and if I can take that off and trade it for my bishop, my light square bishop's not nearly as strong as his, and I'm very happy to trade that off. So I go queen d7 here, and now he plays bishop a3. He's over here on the other side of the board, and he's attacking this pawn. Now, if you sit here and you look at this position for a bit, you might think if I continue with my plan, I might be hanging a pawn. You might say, well, now if you go bishop h3, and he takes your bishop and you take back with the queen, then aren't you hanging this pawn on d6? But actually, this is checkmate in 3 if he falls for this. And I saw this in the game, because after I go with knight g4 and he plays rook e1, which is the best computer move, after he does that, then I have takes. He goes here, and this is checkmate. Queen takes f2, checkmate. So I was hoping for bishop takes d6. I was hoping that he would be like, oh, free pawn, and I'd be like, nah, man, it's checkmate. But he didn't fall for that one. This was a classical game, so he had plenty of time to see it. But not to worry, he would fall for some tricks in the game very shortly after. So anyways, so let's just go back to how the game actually was. So even though he's sort of softening up this pawn with bishop a3, it's not actually a problem, and I can go with bishop h3 anyways because of the checkmate we just looked at. And oh yeah, this rook was still here. And so what he ultimately decides with is rook c1. Rook c1 is a bit of a strange move. I'm still not sure exactly why he played it. I mean, it adds support to this knight, I guess. I mean, he definitely must have seen the checkmate if he played, the sequence I just showed you. So he decided to move the other rook to c-file. Maybe he was planning on opening things up because he did play d4 here shortly. But after he plays rook c1, I take this very strong bishop. That was the plan all along. And he takes my bishop back with his king, which is fine. This is all what I was expecting. And now I go straight for the kill, and I shoot with h5. Now, you might be thinking, Nick, aren't you overextending your kingside pawns, what about your king? What about your king safety? Look at all this open space on the king side, And I mean, you're not really close to being able to castle on the queen side yet. You're gonna have to go put your knight on a6 or something, or move the queen, and then, and you're gonna have to spend some time if you want to castle queen side. I thought about this a lot in the game, but I decided I really wanted to go straight for trying to open up the h-file. I wanted to invest fully in this attack because I knew if I just played solid and I played, just a solid move like castling, which I'm sure was actually the best move. But I knew if I did that, I would be just playing into his hand because this is a classical chess game. And I knew up until this point, he had played pretty good moves. Rook c1 is probably the first really questionable move. But I didn't want to just play into his hand. I didn't want to make him too comfortable anyways. So I go h5, and I immediately start asking him questions. And then he goes with the d4 move. He goes straight for the center. So I'm attacking him on the flank. He's attacking me in the center. Now, I decided he wants to open things up. I'm not going to let him. I'm going to go e4. The reason I go e4 is, one, because it puts pressure on this square here, and it obviously also prevents him from actually doing anything with this d4 move. Now, in reality, this move actually isn't the best move. It's not a blunder. It's an inaccuracy, though. I should have just gone straight for h4, and I should have just completely ignored this d4 move. I didn't want to let him open things up, though, and I thought it was worth putting pressure on this square. So I go e4, and he goes queen c2. So he's adding another attacker to this square, and I only have one defender on it at the moment. And you'll notice my king is down here on this file, so I have to be kind of careful, about, knight takes. If I play just something simple like knight takes back, queen takes, so knight here, queen here, that would be a check. And then, I have to think, am I actually safe there? Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, we'll just castle here, get out of danger. But then I was, when I thought about it, but I didn't want to move my rook off this file because I want to open this file up and I want to come in for an attack. That's the whole reason I played this move. So I don't want to just throw my whole attack away just because he's putting a little pressure over here. So I also thought, well, what if I move the king now so that the check isn't a problem? I decided to just push h4 after some time, which actually is a blunder. And like I said, please don't judge me for this move. This was the best move on the last turn if I didn't play e4, but on this move, it's a blunder. But not to worry, I learned from this. But now he plays knight takes, which I was expecting him to play. I play h takes g3, so now the file is opened up. And then now he played the wrong move. Obviously, he probably should have taken my knight with check. I take back, and that's probably what he was thinking about. He didn't want to trade pieces here. He wanted to keep material on the board. And he saw that this was a free pawn because his bishop and his knight are both attacking it. He really, really should have taken my knight, but he went with this check instead. Knight takes d6 check. And I went with king d8. Because there's no more useful checks after this. You'll notice, yeah, he can check me over here. Yeah, he can check me over here. But my queen is very conveniently placed. She's protecting both of those checks. So he goes with f takes g3 now. And he's opened up this rook on my knight down here. But when he does this, I now have the access to queen h3 check. I'm making use of this open file I created. Yeah, I sacrificed having to have my king literally in the middle of the board. And I also temporarily sacrificed a pawn for it. But now I have this massive attack over here, and I really think it was worth it. Now, granted, if he had taken my knight here, I would have been in a lot more trouble than I am now. Even after queen h3 check, white is still winning slightly. He goes with king f2. Because he wants to put his king over here on e1. He wants to kind of tuck his king in safely. So, of course, I go with knight g4 check. And then he does tuck his king in on e1. And, I realized, his king's actually kind of safe there. But I do have this very nice fork right here with knight takes e3. I've won back my pawn. So like I said, this is only a temporary sacrifice. And now I'm attacking the rook and the queen at the same time, and I also have a double attack on this rook. So this looks like a really, really good move, but it's actually, can you believe it? Knight takes e3 is a blunder because of if he had to play a very, very specific sequence here, and any other sequence was losing for him. But he had to start checking me with the knight, and then at the very right moment, he had to come in and save his queen, and it was actually a 1, 2, 3, 4. It was a 7-move sequence he had to find here, and he had to play exactly those 7 moves, or else he was losing. And he did start the sequence, sort of, but he actually already on the very start of the sequence played a slight inaccuracy. He went with this knight check instead of the other one. He went with knight takes f7 check, which is a fork. He's attacking my rook and my king at the same time. And of course, I can't take anything over here until I save my king. I went with king c8, which is also a mistake by me, apparently, because he can just come back and check me again. But I knew that, and actually on this point here, at this point I offered a draw because I thought we were just going to repeat moves, and I thought that was his best option. But I offered a draw here, and my opponent correctly assessed that he was winning here. So I did get a little scared when he declined my draw, because I was like, yeah, if he's able to figure this, something out here, I could be in trouble, because my king is out in the open, even though I have a massive attack. But I really just need one turn, and I can convert this into a win. So he declines my draw, though, so I already know, okay, we're not going to be repeating moves. He goes back to d6, knight d6 check. I come back to d8, king d8. Now he takes the other pawn with check, knight takes b7 check, which is all right. Everything here. If he continues just checking me with the knight, then he is winning. And I come back to c8. I want to just repeat as many times as I can, because I want to draw here. I want to draw until what he does here. This turn that he did on this move cost him the game. Now, if you're a beginner or an intermediate and you're looking at this position and you're the white pieces and you just won you're up 4 points of material right now, and you just won 2 pawns for free with this series of checks. You see that your knight's hanging, you see that your queen's hanging, you see that your rook is hanging, with 2 pieces on it. If you're a beginner here, you probably would kind of get a little bit scared like he did. And you would say, okay, I need to save my queen if I want to keep playing, and why not take this free pawn down here? Which is what he did. Now, this was one of the worst moves he could have possibly done on the board, because although he was completely winning a second ago, if he just kept checking me and then started saving his pieces at the right moment, well, he picked a moment where this is hanging, his queen is off on the side of the board. Yeah, it's attacking my bishop, I guess, but he picked a really bad moment to try to continue with sort of an offensive plan, because he's now given me a turn to do something. So obviously, well, maybe not so obviously, but I decided with queen takes f1 check, which is the best move on the board. And I am now winning with the black pieces, because now after he goes king d2, I have the move that I feel I was robbed of a double exclam on. I would like you guys to maybe take a look, maybe pause the video, see if you can find the move here. Let me know if you can find the move that I played here. Like I said, this was a classical game. I think I spent at least 10 minutes on this board. There's only one move that works here. You'll notice that my my queen is under attack by this rook. You'll notice that this bishop's hanging. You'll notice that his knight over here is hanging. That's tempting to take. If I take that, it's losing. You'll notice that this pawn up here is hanging. So you'll notice that this is a very, let's say, dynamic position. But the move I finally did, if you're ready for it, was knight takes c4 check. So this was actually a sacrifice of the knight. I knew that he could take back with the pawn. I knew that he could take back with the rook. I knew I was giving up a knight for a pawn, but the important thing was that this move was a check. And what it was doing was it was giving me another turn afterwards to continue my attack. No matter how he recaptured, I had another move afterwards that I was going to do. If he took with the pawn, I was going to swoop down with my queen, and I was going to try to trade queens. And I was going to say, well, I have 2 rooks, and you would have at the end of that all, you'd have, this knight still hanging. I would have, there would be a great material imbalance, but I would have the 2 rooks to maybe use to my advantage after the queens came off. And yeah, you have more pawns, but I'm going to try to win that. He should have taken this with the pawn, but what he did was he took it with the rook. Maybe this was sort of a psychological move. Maybe this was, he's like, oh, well, he's definitely thought about if I take with the pawn, so I'm going to take with the rook and try to throw him off. But actually taking with the rook was worse than taking with the pawn, because now I have bishop h6 check. I had bishop h6 check if he took with the pawn as well, which would have, I guess, won the rook because it was sitting behind the king. So yeah, I had bishop h6 check no matter what he did, but I think it was worse if he took with the pawn and then I played bishop h6 check, because he had some moves there, like blocking with the knight and stuff. But no, he takes with the rook and I go bishop h6 check, and with the next move he basically loses the game on the spot. He plays knight f4 to block the check. I take this with the bishop, and this is already mate in 4. He takes back with the pawn. I come up here with my rook with check, and this is already mate in 3 here. He ultimately decides king here, and then queen here is checkmate. Like I said, I was really proud of this game. I hope you found it entertaining. Like I said, I think knight takes c4. I deserved the brilliant on that one. What do you think? But yeah, please let me know what you think of this game, and thank you so much for watching. Bye now.